You have to be very well informed as to where you are and where you're heading, and then what kind of steps you need to
Yep.
take to get there. I learned a lot about myself through this journey and the ability of thinking beyond what I had been conditioned to believe throughout my life. So it was an interesting experience, and I think the journey continues every day. Why is it so hard for people to really develop a map for the learning journey, a map for the career journey? I do a lot of sessions. I do workshops on career mapping. I do workshops on personal brand, developing your personal brand. And that's where the idea to start RevoHub came in. So we can spend our entire lives sitting on the sidelines thinking, okay, not this year, next year, 6 months, 2 years. It happened. You just have
Yep.
to jump in and you'll figure it out.
You're listening to the East Meets West Pakistani Professional Journeys podcast, released bi-weekly every Sunday at 5 p.m. on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple iTunes. All right, welcome to the East Meets West Pakistani Professional Journeys podcast. Today we have Maham Khalid, who has completed her studies from the University of Punjab with a master's in public administration. She's completed a bachelor's degree, double major in psychology and sociology. She's a highly accomplished and result-driven HR manager and project manager with extensive experience, such as having worked at the Career Foundation as a program manager, founder at RevoHub, and director of employment and training at the YWCA. Pleasure having you on, Mom.
So the pleasure's all mine. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so I guess we could start off in terms of your experience in Pakistan. Do you mind sharing what's your relation to Pakistan? How are you related?
Absolutely. I was born in Pakistan, so of course the relation is forever. My family is originally
Yeah.
from Pakistan. My mother's from India. My mother's family is from India. My father's family is from Punjab. I grew up primarily in Punjab, in Lahore. That's where all my education was. I got married in Pakistan and then I moved to Canada many years ago. But yeah, Pakistan's embedded in me.
Got you. Is there any experiences you'd like to share from Pakistan that you've carried forward in your career or personal life, or any mentors that you've came across during your time in Pakistan that have helped you to this
To
point?
be honest, when you receive your initial education in an area, there's so many relations, so many connections, so many smaller life lessons that you get throughout your journey. And this kind of learning journey actually continues throughout your life. Once having moved to Canada and working in the Canadian ecosystem, I've really come to respect the resilience that our people show and the creativity in finding solutions. So we have this kind of mindset
Yeah.
where we just don't stop until we get what we need to get done. And I'm so glad that I have that in me, because especially, you see, growing up in a country like Pakistan, where you still have limited resources, you have limited opportunities as compared to the globally. So I really appreciate that mindset of ours and I see this a lot in the people, like in my organization, my current organization as well. I've worked with a lot of Pakistanis. We just have that perseverance. We do not stop until we get the job done, which I really appreciate.
So, in terms of the walking through your experience or your journey from Pakistan to Canada, did you have any stops along the way in terms of countries, or was it like a straight Pakistan to Canada? How was that experience like for you?
It was directly, like, I was in Pakistan. I was working in Pakistan. I'd done my master's, my second master's actually. My first master's was actually from NCA in interior design and
Okay.
architecture, but I never got to pursue it. Then I did another master's in public administration, and then I was working. I actually set up a restaurant in Pakistan, and I also was working for HR as an HR manager for another organization. And then we moved here to Canada, which was direct. But I guess in terms of the journey was, of course, very interesting, because it's a completely different, it's not just the geographical landscape that changes, it's the mindset, it's the perspectives, it's pretty much everything. It's a different area altogether.
Got you. So, what was the initial struggles you faced when you first moved to Canada? Was it pretty seamless that you got set and there was not significant issues that you came?
Azam, this is a very interesting question. I think it's a great question, because the other day I was in a training about diversity, equity, and inclusion, those organizational change trainings that we do.
Yeah.
And during that training, they asked a question that, in terms of your journey, what kind of roadblocks, what kind of hindrances you have experienced culturally. And that was when I was sitting down and I was thinking, so yes, being a visible minority, a woman, a South Asian woman, all these things are of course there, those
Yeah.
barriers we do face. But an interesting barrier when I was reflecting was that it's the mindset shift. Because you see, coming from a country like Pakistan, it's a country which is very male dominated, for lack of a better word. You're not really conditioned to grow and to break out of the mold. There's always this mindset of a glass ceiling for females. So that was something that was really interesting that I came across, that the overcoming that mindset. And especially when I moved to Canada, that belief that no, there's limitations, there are obligations to certain things that I really must be my top priority. My career cannot be my top priority. Initially, I think more than anything else, I faced that too, because the child care, you're the primary caregiver for the children, and you should be invested, like your life's focus is to have that perfect home, but that's not what is. That life is much more than that. And we can, as
Yeah.
women, and I'm not saying it's just for Pakistani women, it's women all over the world, getting that balance, that work-life balance is still a challenge, because there is gender disparity and there is inequality in terms of the work we do in the house, the way we view our worldview really. It was interesting, but I think it's a fantastic experience because I learned a lot about myself through this journey, and the ability of thinking beyond what I had been conditioned to believe throughout my life. So it was an interesting experience, and I think the journey continues every day.
Yeah. So I find it interesting. So you have been in HR since, I guess, since you moved here in Canada. So like, how did you decide to go in this field? Was it you realized in university and back in your old levels, or when was it when you
So
realized?
basically, when I was doing my second master's, I did my master's in public administration. And right then,
Yeah.
I think they had recently started the ability to have a second major. And then they said HR. So I knew it was up and coming. So I just took it. And I'm so grateful because when I moved to Canada, that transition became easier to really focus on just HR as a generalist. Once I came to Canada, I actually wrote both my CHRP and CHRL exam. I started working towards them. And then I transitioned into HR domain. But then, of course, it didn't stop there. Now I'm not in pure HR, but yes, that's how it really happened.
Yeah.
But again, and that also stems from my interest in the human strength of an organization, because the intersection of business and the human element is what really drives success in any organization, really. So that's how I ended up in human resources.
Okay. Did you find the designations helpful? I think so you mentioned a few already, but how did you find them and when you were looking for roles and
To be
whatnot?
honest, I am very glad that I did, because you see, the way we do HR in
Okay.
Pakistan or any other country, it's always different, right? WSIB, like workplace health and safety, is not
Yeah.
even a discussion in Pakistan, right? So the designations did help. And it's not just about the designations, it's the credibility that comes with it. So I actually wrote both my exams 1 month apart. So my
Oh,
idea,
wow.
yeah. So because my strategy was, if I fail one, I'll pass the other. The preparation is the same. So I wrote both. I wrote one in
Yeah.
February, I wrote the other one in March, and then I passed both. And I was like, okay, this is good. But for employers, because see, now when they see that I have the CHRP, CHRL, they know that I have that education, that knowledge to back it up. The CHRL, of course, is a more extensive exam, and it's a bit more, I would say, like in terms of knowledge testing, it's a bit more robust. So this, of course, does
Yeah.
help. But more than anything, it's the networking. It's going to those HR events. It's reading what's going on. Because when you join, because the HRPA is, of course, the one that I gave my exams through. So HRPA does a lot of events.
Yeah.
They have a lot of blogs and posts and articles coming out, because the era that we exist in, it's very evolving very fast. It's super dynamic. So it is very
Yeah.
important that you keep abreast of what's happening in the world. Like right now, we're talking about the integration of AI with project management or with HR and everything. So
Yeah.
it's very important. So more than the education is the credibility, I feel, has with the two designations, and also the networking, being in the heart of HR. That's what really helps.
Okay. Sounds good. And then I guess, do you mind telling the audience, like, I know you moved into your own company or business. How did that How did you get exposed to that? A little bit more.
Absolutely. It's so interesting. These past 2 years have been such a, I would say, roller coaster of different things happening. Some days I personally forget, okay, when did this happen? But basically, once I
Yeah.
got into program management, I got into cloud security. Then I rolled out a project for cloud security. Then I also got exposure to scale trades, which I had absolutely no clue about. HVAC and network cabling, no idea. Then I got into the program with the UFT with cyber security. And that, somehow during that journey, because you see, I was a program manager for nonprofits. Now, as with charitable organizations
Yeah.
and nonprofits, it's government funding, it's provincially funded, federally funded. And I've worked on a lot of different programs. What I did notice was because sometimes our targets was recruit, train, and deploy 180 people in 2 years. That was one of the projects. And what I noticed was that as a manager, I'm very hands on with my team, especially initially when we're setting up something, I'm very hands on. I like to be involved. I would sit into the interviews and I would notice that some of the people were even much more qualified than myself or any other member of my team. I had PhDs applying, they already had that knowledge. But
Oh.
why weren't they able to find
Mhm.
a job? Why was it that I was sitting here taking their interview, although they were much more qualified? And this is a challenge a lot of us immigrants faced, a lot of us refugees faced, a lot of like career professionals face really. Because what we don't understand is that a strategy is so important. Because this is one thing I
Yeah.
always say. It's 50% your technical proficiency, but 50% your ability to sell yourself. This is where a lot of
Yeah.
us lack. And what we try to do is use the spaghetti approach. Really, just throw things against the wall, hope it fits. But that's not how it's supposed to be. You have to be very strategic. You have to be very well informed as to where you are and where you're heading, and then what kind of steps you need to
Yeah.
take to get there. And that's where the idea of RevoHub came in because 2 years ago, when I was a program manager, clean tech was this discussion was starting. It wasn't as active as it is as today. And as a program manager at that point, I wanted to bring this under my portfolio. I wanted to learn about this area because this is something as a citizen of the world and as a parent, something I'm pretty concerned about myself. So I wanted to
Yep.
find out, okay, how do I integrate into the sector? What sort of training as a project manager, program manager do I need? So then I can add this under my portfolio as well. I remember for 2 days, I looked at wind, I looked at solar, and now as a layman, as a person who's not in the sector, it's very hard. It's very hard to identify, okay, what works best for me? Where should I end up? What is up and coming? So those sort of things. And I remember for 2 days, I did a lot of research and then I shut my laptop. I'm like, okay, let's go back to cybersecurity because that works. That's easy. That's familiar. Let's go back. But that idea didn't leave me. That why is it so hard for people to really develop a map for the learning journey, a map for the career journey? I do a lot of sessions. I do workshops on career mapping. I do workshops on personal brand, developing your personal brand. And that's where the idea to start RevoHub came in because RevoHub itself is an AI integrated learning marketplace. So what we are doing at RevoHub is not only are we selling courses, people sell courses all the time, not a big deal. What we are doing is we're using the AI to help you map that journey. So bring that strategy into how you want to get from point A to point B. So that's where the idea RevoHub
Okay.
came in because it just really bothered me. Why is it not simplified? Why are there so many barriers to entry? Because common people like layman do not understand that number one, sustainability, ESG itself is such a vast sector. You don't have to be an engineer or a scientist to get into it. There's so many different avenues you can explore. So I want to make it accessible to
Yeah.
people. I don't want to face what I faced 2 years ago. I want to make it easy and seamless and for you to make that educated decision where you want to end up. Because again, it has to be aligned to what the labor market is looking for. And so that's how RevoHub came into being. I'm still in the startup stage because it's just me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's ongoing.
It must be nerve-wracking even starting your own venture. Like, what was I guess you mentioned the push that got you to actually start it, but how did you get over that fear, especially when starting new ventures? A lot of people kind of, it's not it's hard to take that step. So how was your process?
Absolutely. And that step does never becomes easier because I have a full-time
Yeah.
job. I have this, I have other obligations as well. So it's crazy to be honest. And that fear does not go. But when you're really, what I feel is with founders, the ones who really succeed are the ones who really believe in the product. And
Yeah.
again, it doesn't matter if I fail or if I make it. It's important. What's important that this is important to me. This is something I want to do. And I'm glad that I'm able to do it because a lot of times, a lot of us have so many other challenges they're facing. And I'm not saying it's easy for me as well, but it's just that I'm able to still push forward. And I personally feel I'm not able to give it as much 100% as I was able to give it for like maybe November, December last year when I was as a consultant.
Yeah.
But now that's something I very strongly believe in. And when you believe in something, it's just easier to keep on pushing towards it. It doesn't
Yeah.
stop. And I do want to add here, the other day, I don't know, those reels that come up, and it was so interesting. Somebody was talking about saying that it's very easy to sit on the sidelines and judge someone, but the person who you should really
Yeah.
be watching is the one who's actually fighting in the arena. So we can spend our entire
Mhm.
lives sitting on the sidelines thinking, okay, not this year, next year, 6 months, 2 years. It happens. You just have
Yeah.
to jump in and you'll figure it out. So I'm not there yet. I'm still
Right.
figuring it out. I'm still learning every day, but at least I know that I have given it my best shot.
Awesome. Yeah, like the drive to continue going. There's days where I assume that there's struggling and you probably work is in the way, family obligations, and how do you maintain positivity? I guess that's like a important point.
I think humor has really helped me. My best friend always
Okay.
says it's my coping mechanism. I just like to keep, and
Yeah.
this, our tagline for Revo Hub is we simplify the journey to sustainability. And this is something I believe it's a
Yeah.
personal ethos. Why do we have to complicate everything so much? Keep it simple. Life is, it is complicated. There are roadblocks, there are challenges, but keep it simple. Okay, worst. So what's the worst that could happen? I'll fail. This will not
Yeah.
work out. That's okay. At least I know I tried. So yes, it's not easy.
Yeah.
You have imposter syndrome. Being a South Asian, but of course I
Yeah.
have imposter syndrome. There are days when I feel, what am I
Yeah.
doing? Things like that, that does happen. But you just have to keep on pushing forward
Yeah.
because if you can, and that mindset. I'm sorry. I also teach. I teach business courses in the evening sometimes. So of course that professor in me sometimes bubbles out. But I keep on saying is that mindset, oh, I don't feel I can do this. I don't feel up to it. I don't feel I'm good enough. There's no need to stop and think about feelings. If you decided to do something, then just keep on pushing forward. Don't, because the moment we start reflecting and feeling and just, then sometimes those pauses become from moments, they become to longer stretches of time. Sometimes we just have to keep on jumping
Right.
and keep on just keep on pushing.
Got you. So I also like in terms of your work, so you're a director as well. So how has that experience been
Well,
like?
it's very, because, but like I said, when I left the Home Depot, I got into the nonprofit sector. So the Career Foundation, then Salvation Army, then UFT, and now the YWCA. It's been interesting, but I haven't gone back to the private sector because I just love
Right.
the work we do here, because that one person you help in their
Mhm.
journey, it's so
Yeah.
fantastic. And then of course, now being a director, I have a very large portfolio, lots of different projects, programs happening. It's absolutely brilliant because even that one success story or that testimonial is what makes it worthwhile. And it's really
Yeah.
interesting work because you see, you get funding. Of course, you have to get the funding first because we're not making money here. We are helping the community.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting kind of innovation people don't really realize that nonprofits are doing. So right now, I have a project under my belt where we are rolling out training for cybersecurity, data analytics, data science, and EV. And not just EV as in vehicles, we are doing electrification of airplanes, railroads, cars.
Oh,
It is
wow. Okay.
super cool. It's absolutely fantastic. I think we are one of the first few nonprofits who are doing this. Then we have projects there's a project I just completed. It's called Shift Change. It's to help men become better allies to women in the workplace. Because 91% of women leave their workplaces sometimes because of they face some sort of discrimination or violence, and so they leave workplaces. So we just rolled out a training for that. Then we have training for pre-apps, auto mechanics. It's like very interesting. But yes, it's really crazy busy. People sometimes underestimate how much work people do in the nonprofit sector because we have limited resources, but we still have to roll out those big results. So it's really,
Right.
I love it.
Got you. So I think so. I've been preluding to this question for I don't know how many questions I've asked before, but how do you organize your time? You're working, you obviously have family commitments, you have your own startup. So do you have a scheduling process or do you just take it on as it comes, or how do you organize yourself?
To be honest, you see, when you are just in so many different directions, it is a challenge. And I actually serve on two boards as well. And then I run a food table with a group of ladies. Yeah, it's like people hear me and sometimes I hear myself. I'm like, how do I do this? And that food table is also another project that I'm very passionate because we cook. So sometimes twice a week, I'm cooking food for 30 people and taking it to that tables.
Wow.
It's exciting. But
Nice.
one thing that has worked best for me is yes, I do workshops on the 20/80 rule and all this. It's all fantastic, but I don't really have time to do that. What I do really do is a lot of record, like documentation. I do have a lot of data because I'm human, I'll forget. So I do take a lot of notes. And then, of course, whenever I start my day, I actually have a list of tasks that I want to, because then I revert back to them and I highlight whatever I've finished. So that just gives that small high to me that, yes, I achieved this much in my day.
Yeah.
It also helps when you come back to it from time to remember what did we achieve, like in terms of creating your own portfolio of deliverables that you've done. But another thing which has worked for me is like when you have to do a small task, do it immediately. Don't wait to reply to an email. Don't wait to reply to get a job done. If it needs to be done now, just do it. So technique for your interview too, I was working until half an hour before because I wanted to finish off everything because Monday, my weekend needs to be relaxed. I need to think about other things and my brain needs a rest. And then Monday, I should start on a clean slate. So try to do it as quickly as possible. If somebody asks a question, don't say, I will come back to my emails at the end of the day. Do it right then and there.
Yeah.
And I think I'm a bit of a tyrant in terms of I get people to get that job done. I am a bit of a driver. So I really push people to get together and get it done.
I guess it really comes down to the motivation, like so you mentioned that you have humor to back up in terms of in your startup, but in general, like when you have all these tasks to do, to try to, maintain that drive on each task you complete, like how do you maintain that? Is there like a framework that you have in your mind that, you work with, or like, how does that work? Or do you just get the task done and you just move on to the next task and that's it?
That's a very interesting question. And it's not very easy for me to put down one framework that I follow. Yes, I do have I would say a priority matrix that I follow, of course, high level priorities.
Yep.
But in general, for me, it's really about that small goal setting. For me, goals are so important.
Okay.
And I really do start off by focusing on getting the smaller goals done because that just gives you that release because you're like, otherwise it's sitting on your mind that I have to get this done. So even with projects, so now under my portfolio are very diverse projects. So some are millions of dollars, some are a few $1,000s, all different sorts. When I went into this role, I went to my VP and we were just having a discussion and I said, let's focus on the easy wins. Because the easy wins are like you have them out of the way because the other ones will obviously require a longer duration, a longer stretch of, it's like a marathon really. So I focus on getting the smaller ones done, then going to the larger ones. But of course, you have to prioritize. If you do, again, the road mapping is something I'm so passionate about in terms of your career journey, in terms of your learning journey, in terms of anything. So I'm very big on creating a roadmap for each and every project I do. Some don't even require it. Like one project I just did was like 6 sessions, really, nothing much. It's a project, it's money, but we have to do 6 sessions. But I still create a roadmap. I still look at the risk
Right.
factors that can come up. How do we mitigate those risks? Because again, the project management experience also comes in. So I'm very big on
Yep.
prioritization. I'm very big on getting those smaller wins, which kind of sets you up for the motivation for the larger wins as well.
Okay. No, that makes a lot. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I guess now that you've gone through all these experiences, I've asked this to the majority of the guests. If you were to go back in time, like right now, from all the experiences you've gained, moving to Canada, is there any advice you would give to yourself in terms of any changes you would have done or any things to accelerate where you are right now? Is there any advice you would give?
To be honest, and this is something I felt because when I initially came in and started studying for my CHRP, CHRL, everything, and then once I went into the nonprofit sector, I realized how much support the government gives, how much is available
Yep.
out there that we don't know about. So I did this on my own expense,
Yep.
right? If I could go back, I would definitely do another master's. I love it. I love studying, I guess. I'm very academically
Okay.
inclined. But yeah, so I would really, because what I've noticed is a lot of times now people reach out to me on LinkedIn for other countries before landing even, because they've done their research. They have really done their due
Yep.
diligence and they know what is available. A lot of times, a lot of us don't really know what is available. So like these trainings that I was mentioning, they're 100% free of cost. And these are from places
Mhm.
like McMaster University, University of Ottawa, University of Guelph. These are really good institutions. It's free of cost. I didn't know this. I wish I had known this. I wish I could have strategized better because yes, I did go for CHRP, CHRL. I'm very happy for that, but I would rather have gone for a master's, which I didn't even know there's a government funded
Oh,
program for
okay.
this.
Oh,
I would have gone for
yep.
that. And of course, but I honestly do not have any regrets because I'm happy where I am right now. I'm happy that I got in where I am in a shorter duration of time. Because to be honest, I did not get that when you start your career in your 20s. I moved to Canada. That was another step back. When I came to Canada, actually, my first job was with Rogers. So coming from Pakistan
Okay.
here and then going to a Rogers billing and accounts customer support, that's a major step down, which I did. But I'm
Yep.
glad, this journey, I would not change anything. Yes, I would accept the master's. I'm perfectly happy where I am today.
Awesome. No, sounds good. And any advice you would give to an individual that's interested in breaking into the HR sector? Do you have any general advice you'd like to give before we get close to ending off?
Absolutely. In terms of the HR sector, again, I want whoever wants to, and not just talking about HR, I'm talking about any sector really. Do your due diligence,
Yep.
do your research, see where it's heading because you see we're in a very big revolution right now in terms of how jobs are
Yep.
looking now and how they will look like 5 years later. So somebody who's a software engineer, there's no guarantee you'll have a job. If somebody who goes into HR, there's no guarantee. So you have to have that ability to pivot. I always give my own examples. So look at me. I started as a public administration, then I got into HR pure. Then I got into program management. Now I have a much larger portfolio. Yes, I have remained in the domain of developing or optimizing human potential. That's what I've really done. But then I've added other facets to myself. So anyone looking to break into any domain, do your research, but look how the industry is shaping, how it's evolving, what are global trends. And we are lucky that we are able to access so much information now. It's so easy. Imagine when we were kids, we used to go to the library and actually had to look through those files and find out where a book was. Now everything is accessible. And then, of course, we have our allies in AI agents as well who are supporting us. So
Yeah.
find out what the trends are. Do not go I personally would not suggest anybody to become a generalist now because that's redundant now. You have to find a specialization, a niche. Show your expertise in an area. So if, for instance, you
Yep.
want to be a project manager, then think about not just a project manager. Yes, project managers, surface level, they can set up weekly cadences, they can do stakeholder communication. If you have a niche, if you have an expertise, that's where you'll get most opportunities really. And that's where in terms of monetary rewards you're going to get the most. With project managers, we know that now they are looking for project managers who have AI experience or understanding. So, and looking
Yeah.
for, if you're really focused on HR, yes, getting that credibility, joining an association actually just showcases that this person has taken the journey, they have the learning, they are interested in optimizing what they deliver. But also do your research as to how you can have other certifications. Micro certifications are huge. Now, I say to my kids, even you don't have to go for a master's immediately. Do your undergrad. No discussion about that. But then really think about those micro certs, which are going to help you really optimize your resume. Yes, get that certification, get that basic knowledge, but then look for a really core area of expertise that sets you apart.
Awesome. So we can end off. I asked this to all the guests. You can take your time with this response and you can go both personal or professional, your choice. But how do you define success?
I think success would be when you are satisfied with where you're satisfied with the journey that made you get where you are. And then, yes, you can strive for goals, that position, that state of contentment, you've achieved it, which we sadly, a lot of us do not. And then for me, success is also staying true to your values, what you, as a principle, staying true to your principles, what you like, there is no budging on you. This is something which you hold dear, but then having a big vision. So your values and your principles should not stop you from going after what you want to do. But being true to yourself is very important, because a lot of times we, in our quest to integrate, in our quest to be liked, in our quest to be accepted for what we are not really honest. So a person who has principles and a person who has values is something who will always be respected.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that was a great response. And Mom, thank you for your time. Like, I know it's on a Friday and pretty late in the evening, so thanks for taking the time. It was great chatting about your experience from Pakistan to Canada and, you know, your startup as well. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. It was such a nice conversation. It was such a pleasure to have this conversation. Thank you.